Welcome to the Curious Machine. Okay, I prepared a question, well, everything. Today, we're not just talking about a topic. We're going on a pretty mind-bending quest, a deep dive into the simulation hypothesis.
Mm.
It's this question that's grabbed thinkers from, ancient philosophers right up to tech people like Elon Musk and scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Is this all real, what you're seeing, hearing, feeling? Or could we just be like characters in some unbelievably advanced cosmic computer game? We're here to look at the clues, weigh the arguments, and see if we can get closer to answering that really unsettling question. Are you even real?
It's definitely a concept that forces you to um, confront what existence even means. At its heart, the simulation hypothesis basically suggests that everything we perceive, our whole reality, is actually a super sophisticated computer simulation, so advanced you couldn't tell it apart from a quote-unquote base reality.
Hmm.
We'll unpack what makes this idea so compelling, why so many serious people actually entertain it, and also, importantly, why a lot of experts argue pretty strongly against it.
Right, so let's pull back that curtain. When people talk about the simulation hypothesis, what's the actual core idea, the thing that makes someone like Elon Musk think it's, highly probable?
Well, the central thought is that any really advanced civilization, once they get to what some call a post-human stage,
Meaning way beyond us technologically.
exactly, way beyond, they'd have just unbelievable computing power. And with that power, they could run what are called ancestor simulations.
Hmm.
Think incredibly detailed simulations of their own past, maybe different versions of it, so real that the beings inside, well, they'd be conscious, or at least they'd seem to be,
Mm.
and they'd have absolutely no idea they were in a simulation.
Mm. Like our video games, but taken to the absolute extreme.
Precisely.
Hmm.
Think about Pong versus today's hyper-realistic VR. Now imagine that progress continuing for, I don't know, thousands, maybe millions of years.
Okay, I can see the trajectory, even if it's a huge leap.
Right. And this idea was really formalized by the philosopher Nick Bostrom. It's called the simulation argument, or sometimes the trilemma. It's important to get this. He's not saying we are in a simulation, full stop. It's more of a logical argument. It says one of three possibilities has to be true.
Yeah.
And two of them are kind of bleak.
Okay, lay them out for us. What are the three options in this trilemma?
So the first possibility, Bostrom argues that the fraction of civilizations like ours that ever reach that post-human stage,
Yeah.
stage where they could run these simulations, is almost zero.
Meaning they wipe themselves out first.
Yeah, basically. Or they hit some wall. Maybe they destroy themselves with their own tech, AI, nukes, biotech gone wrong, you name it. Or maybe they're just fundamental limits to technology they can't overcome.
So just surviving long enough is the first big hurdle. That's sobering. Okay, what's number two?
The second possibility is that the fraction of those post-human civilizations that are actually interested in running ancestor simulations is close to zero. Maybe they have like really strong ethical objections, creating conscious beings just to suffer in a simulation. Maybe that's taboo, or maybe they just don't care. They've moved on. Exploring their past seems like a colossal waste of resources to them.
Okay, so they survive, but they just choose not to do it. What's the third one? The one that makes everyone uneasy, assuming the first two aren't true.
That's the kicker, right?
Mhm.
The third point is the fraction of all conscious beings with experiences like ours that are living inside a simulation is very close to one. Almost certain. Yeah. The key idea, the bit that really gets you, is if simulations are possible and if civilizations survive and are interested, then the sheer number of simulated people, simulated conscious beings, would just dwarf the number of beings in the original base reality. Think about it.
Yeah.
Just one base civilization could run millions of simulations, each with billions of simulated minds. So statistically, if you're a conscious being having these kinds of experiences, the odds are overwhelming that you're in one of the simulations, not the one original reality.
So unless civilizations almost always destroy themselves, or they universally decide not to run simulations, then we're almost certainly simulated. It's like a cosmic numbers game stacked against being original.
But hang on, is it just statistics? Or is there more to it? That's why it's compelling. The analogy often used is the Matryoshka doll, the Russian nesting dolls. If you have simulations within simulations, potentially countless layers deep, what are the odds you're in the very first, outermost doll? The base reality. Practically zero, right? You'd almost certainly be in one of the inner simulated layers, simply because there are vastly more conscious beings living in those layers combined than in the single original one. It's about probability, given the premises hold up.
That nesting doll image.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's chilling. It completely reframes the scale. Just one layer of simulations, and suddenly we're probably not the originals. Wow. It makes you ask, what are the big ifs here? What are the foundational assumptions Bostrom's argument needs for this whole thing to work?
Good question. There are basically four key assumptions floating around that prop this up. First is what you might call the universality of computability. This assumes that everything in the universe, from quantum stuff up to consciousness itself, can eventually be modeled, simulated on a computer. If something about reality is fundamentally not computable, the whole idea kind of breaks down. But, physics seems to suggest things are reducible to information, at least in theory.
Okay, so if you can describe it mathematically or physically, you can simulate it. Makes sense. What's next?
Second assumption, the natural emergence of consciousness. This basically says consciousness isn't magic. It's a natural thing that arises from complex physical processes, like what happens in our brains. It doesn't need a soul or anything supernatural, because if consciousness isn't physical, then no matter how good your simulation is, the beings inside wouldn't really be conscious like us. But again, the scientific view tends towards consciousness being an emergent property of complex systems.
Right. Consciousness from complexity. Assumption 3.
Third is civilizational survival. This is a big one. It assumes that advanced civilizations don't always wipe themselves out. They manage to navigate the dangerous technologies they create. If self-destruction is inevitable, well, then they never get around to making the simulations.
Yeah, that ties right back into the first point of the Trilemma, doesn't it? It's kind of optimistic about humanity or any intelligence lasting long term.
It is, yeah. And the fourth assumption is interest in ancestor simulation. It assumes that these super advanced beings would actually want to run these simulations. Maybe out of scientific curiosity, historical interest, maybe running what-if scenarios about their past. Now, some people raise ethical points here. Is it right to create simulated suffering? But the argument assumes the drive to simulate would likely win out for at least some civilizations.
Okay, so if those four things are true computability, natural consciousness, survival, and interest, then the probability argument really kicks in. But let's get to the juicy part. If we are in a simulation, what would that even look like? Would we see like glitches in the matrix? And where did this whole idea come from anyway? Is it new?
The glitches idea is fun. People sometimes point to weird phenomena as potential evidence, though let's be clear, there are usually much simpler explanations. A big one often mentioned is the quantum measurement problem. You know, how quantum systems seem fuzzy and undecided until we look at them, and then they snap into one state.
Yeah, the observer effect, like in the double slit experiment. Observing changes the outcome.
Exactly. Well, the playful simulation idea is that this could be like a rendering optimization by the simulators. The universe simulation only bothers to fully render the details when a conscious observer is actually looking, saves on processing power, right?
Yeah.
Think of VR headsets that only render high res where your eyes are pointed.
So the universe is lazy rendering, only drawing the bits we're actively paying attention to. That's wild.
And kind of efficient, I guess.
It's a fun thought experiment, yeah. Other things sometimes mentioned, though much less seriously in scientific circles, are stuff like deja vu or the Mandela effect, those weird collective false memories. You could spin a tale about simulation resets or code bugs causing them, but honestly, psychology offers much better explanations. It's mostly just fun speculation. Now, about where the idea came from. Oh, it's way older than computers, way older. This idea of reality being an illusion. It's deep in philosophy all over the world. You've got Zhuangzi in ancient China dreaming he was a butterfly. Or was he a butterfly dreaming he was Zhuangzi? Classic. And in Indian philosophy, the whole concept of Maya is about the illusory nature of the world we perceive.
So it's not just a sci-fi trope from the digital age. It's not at all. In the West, Plato's allegory of the cave is basically this, right? Prisoners mistaking shadows for reality. Then you get Descartes wondering if an evil demon was feeding him a fake reality. That eventually leads to the modern brain in a vat thought experiment. Your brain could just be in a lab, hooked up, living a simulation, and then, yeah, with computers, it got more concrete. Konrad Zuse talked about digital physics back in '69, the universe as a computer. Hans Moravec wrote about mind uploading and future AIs possibly running simulations of us. So yeah, movies like The Matrix made it super popular, but the roots go way, way back.
Okay, so it has a long history, and there are these interesting phenomena you could point to, even if they have other explanations. But let's flip it. A lot of scientists and philosophers push back hard against this. What are the big counterarguments? Why are we probably not living in a simulation?
Right, the criticisms are pretty strong, and they often boil down to, well, common sense and the sheer difficulty of it all. First off, the simplest one, Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually the best. Saying our universe is real just requires fewer weird assumptions than saying it's a simulation run by another, even more complex reality outside ours. Because then you have to ask, okay, what's that reality like? What are its laws? It just pushes the mystery back a step, maybe infinitely. It doesn't actually solve the origin question.
Right, you're just adding layers without answering the fundamental, why is there any?
Exactly. And as we said, those glitches, quantum mechanics, deja vu, they have much simpler, perfectly good scientific explanations within physics or neuroscience. We don't need a simulation hypothesis to explain them. Then there are the massive practical problems, the infeasibility of actually running such a simulation. Think about the energy needed. Simulating a whole universe down to the quantum level. The energy requirements are just astronomical, maybe physically impossible, even using all the energy in our observable universe. Plus, wouldn't simulations within simulations get worse? Like making a copy of a copy. You'd expect resolution limits, degradation, pixelation at some fundamental level. We don't really see evidence of that. Our universe seems remarkably smooth and consistent.
That's a big one. If we were like the 100th simulation down the line, wouldn't things look pretty blurry or glitchy?
You'd think so, yeah. Also, our physics seems based on continuous values, like space and time seem smooth. Computers work with discrete units, bits, pixels, time steps. Perfectly simulating a continuous reality with a discrete machine is incredibly hard, maybe impossible without approximations that might become noticeable, and maybe some things just aren't simulatable. Can you truly simulate consciousness? Real free will, the sheer mind-boggling complexity and perhaps infinite nature of the universe. There are even ideas from logic and math, like Gödel's incompleteness theorems or chaos theory, that suggest any complex system has inherent limits or unpredictability that might make perfect simulation impossible. Is reality just too messy, too complex, too fundamentally unknowable to be perfectly replicated in code?
Deep mathematical and philosophical hurdles there too. What else?
Well, there's a logical objection related to the trilemma itself, sometimes called the last simulation problem. If simulations are common, and we're in one, we're likely just one in a long chain. But that chain has to end somewhere, right? Being the very last simulation in the chain seems statistically just as unlikely as being the very first base reality. And if our civilization can't yet run simulations, it suggests we're either base reality or at the very end of the chain, which is unlikely. It makes the whole lots of simulation scenario a bit less probable statistically. And fundamentally, the burden of proof is on the people making the wild claim. Saying we're in a simulation is an extraordinary claim. It needs extraordinary evidence. Right now, there's zero empirical proof that meets scientific standards. So the default rational position should probably be, we assume we're not in a simulation until proven otherwise. Finally, some argue about motivation. Would the super advanced beings really want to spend all those resources simulating messy ancestors like us? Maybe they'd find it boring or unethical. And that core question again, could simulated beings, sims, truly be conscious in the way we are? If not, then Bostrom's argument about us being simulations doesn't quite land.
Okay, so lots of strong arguments against it, from practicality to logic to just lack of evidence. Where does all this leave us then? Is it just a cool philosophical puzzle, or does thinking about it actually change anything for us?
I think it leaves us in a really interesting spot. Because Bostrom's trilemma, whether you buy the simulation conclusion or not, it forces us to think hard about humanity's possible futures. Remember, the logic suggests one of those three things must be likely. Either civilizations like us almost always self-destruct before getting powerful enough, or if they survive, they almost universally choose not to run these kinds of simulations, maybe for ethical reasons. Or we probably are in one. Each of those scenarios tells us something profound. If we're not simulated, it might imply a warning about our own survival, or maybe a statement about the ultimate values of advanced intelligence. If we are simulated, well, that changes everything about our place in the cosmos and what reality even is. Either way, it pushes us to think about consciousness, technology's limits, the deep future, and maybe the incredible power and potential motivations of whatever might come after us. It's a debate that really stretches your conception of reality itself.
Absolutely. It is definitely a mind-bending ride exploring all this. This deep dive really gives you a lot to chew on. So let me leave you, the listener, with this thought. If you had the power, the technology to create your own hyperrealistic universe, what would it be like? What rules would you set? Would you try to make sure everyone inside had a good experience? Or would you just let them struggle, figure things out, and discover their own reality, whatever that might mean?
Thank you very much for sharing this enjoyable conversation with us. Until we meet again tomorrow with a brand new topic, take very good care of yourselves. Goodbye.